Hello, Standard Dose. Claudia Germuga here, and I am so excited to share more with you about the practice of cycle syncing. I am a conscious movement practitioner as well as a breathwork facilitator and women's health coach. I am such an advocate of menstrual wellness, and cycle syncing is a key practice that I use to stay in touch and amplify my menstrual well-being. So I'm so excited to share more about this practice with you today. What is cycle syncing? It's my hope that whether you are well acquainted with cycle syncing and it's integrated into your life right now at this moment, if you've kind of heard about it, or if this is a brand new concept that you are just hearing about for the first time watching this video, it's my personal hope that no matter where you're at in your journey, you can take away some bit of information or some nugget of wisdom that inspires you to dive deeper into this knowledge. When it comes to women's health and the menstrual cycle, a lot of times we are missing information as women. We didn't get the information that we needed. We don't fully understand our biochemistry and what's happening throughout every month. And so this information, in my experience, has been extremely empowering, and it's really helped me to reclaim my womanhood and come back into my body. My entire reason for integrating cycle syncing into my life and lifestyle, into my wellness regimen, is my background is as a professional contemporary dancer. I grew up being extremely physical and exercising, using my body often. So being very active was very normalized for me. And I also, in the dance industry, experience immense body type pressures, and so I experienced disordered eating and distorted body image, and that led me down a path of extreme overtraining coupled with under eating and restriction, which wreaked havoc on my hormonal system. And so cycle syncing was really the way that I reclaimed that. At one point, I did suffer from a brief period of losing my period altogether, which is known as amenorrhea. And you know, from that perspective, I was rather young, and I was like, yes, I'm not getting my period. Hopefully it stays away. And this, the fact that that was my reaction really saddens me deeply today. Our periods are such an indication, a monthly indicator of our, not just our hormonal health, but our well-being overall. And a lot of times we have been conditioned, or the way that we speak about our periods is very negative. We're cultured and conditioned to see them as an inconvenience, to bond over the negative symptoms that they present or provide us with, and every single month. And cycle syncing is really a dynamic way to shift your relationship to your menstrual cycle and start to change the relationship that you have with it inside your own body personally, but also females in general, to start to shift the conversation, because it's a very disempowering conversation, as one that I hear a lot of times. And just beginning to shift that within yourself and start to speak about this unique and elaborate orchestration of hormones that happens every single month within us as menstruating women, from our teenage years up through menopause, is an incredible thing. And when you start to shift the way that you speak about it with other women, they get curious. Oftentimes we just don't know that there is another way to speak about it, or that we even have a choice, that our periods don't need to be an inconvenience, they don't need to be painful, that we can actually use them as indicators of our health. And so sometimes it's just opening up that that's a possibility that can really push the needle forward. So I'm so excited to dive in today. I have some notes because I could talk about this forever, and I want to get as much information to you as succinctly as possible. So again, we've chatted about what cycle syncing is, but really in essence, what it is, it's taking our behaviors, our lifestyle, our relationships, our work and productivity, our rest, our nutrition, and our mindset, and it's really harmonizing that or aligning it over our menstrual cycle, which is a 28 to 32 day cycle process. It's not just the 3 to 7 days that we might be bleeding or the menstrual phase or a period, which we know of it. It's actually a 4-phase cycle. So when we align all those things over top of this hormonal cycle that is occurring throughout the month, what we find is that we often go from fighting and pushing and hustling and grinding and trying to make it happen to finding that things start to unfold in a very effortless and easeful way, and we reach this thriving state that we might be striving for with much less force or energetic output. It's much more efficient, it's much more harmonious. And so you can, sometimes it's referred to as biohacking your female biochemistry. So if that resonates with you, use that as your way that you define cycle syncing. It can be defined in so many ways, but that's just kind of a brief introduction as to some ways that you conceptualize this practice. As I mentioned, our menstrual cycle is not just the 37 days that we bleed, but it is actually the 28 to 32 day cycle. And this is a biological clock, in essence, the biological rhythm. Other biological rhythms that we might be familiar with in the body are, for instance, the circadian rhythm. Most people are familiar with that. And that's our 24-hour clock that all humans, men and women, have. And so that cycle, right, we most often reference it in relationship to sleep, but it's governed by the sun, it's governed by light. That hormonal cycle is in delicate relationship with light. And so we know that when that rhythm gets thrown off, our sleep gets negatively impacted oftentimes, which creates a whole cascade of events that negatively impact our health and well-being most of the time. Same thing with our menstrual cycle. It's called an infradian rhythm. It's our infradian rhythm as menstruating women. And that just means that it is a cycle that takes more than 24 hours to complete. It takes 28 to 32 days to complete. And so we can use this infradian rhythm, this longer rhythm, to really propel us forward and to find more harmony and alignment within ourselves, as well as right from the physiological standpoint, balance our hormones or optimize our fertility, or decrease negative symptoms or painful periods. Yeah, so our infradian rhythm is key, and embracing this second clock that you have as women is really essential. In terms of our productivity, right? Like a lot of our culture is aligned over top of the circadian rhythm. Our society tends to be cultured in more of a patriarchal way, and men only have a circadian rhythm. So that 24-hour clock works really well for them. Waking up and doing kind of the same routine every day works for them because hormonally they're the same every day. With an infradian rhythm though, you are different every day of the month, especially every week of the month. And this is really empowering and also really liberating to stop expecting yourself to be the same, to produce as much, to feel as energized, to eat the same foods, to think the same thoughts every single day of the month. It's not Groundhog's Day. You want to ebb and flow. We want to cultivate different focuses and allow our body to kind of guide us as this ebb and flow of energy happens, what's beautiful is that as you begin to experience the infradian rhythm and honor the infradian rhythm within you, you begin to kind of see outside other organic infradian rhythms that are occurring, and just this natural dynamic of ebb and flow, right? There's kind of like a peak, and then there's a rest and rejuvenate phase that completes any cycle, right? It's not just power through. You've got to rise, and then you've got to complete the cycle with some rest. So, for instance, some natural or organic rhythms that you might see, some cycles that you might see, right, are the lunar cycles. The cycles, the phases of the moon are very akin to the female menstrual cycle, and they overlay on top of one another, right? There's the full moon and the new moon, right? One is really bright and one is really dark. Same thing, those two events kind of correlate with the two peak events of the menstrual cycle, menstruation and ovulation. Additionally, we have the seasons, right? We've all undergone the cycle of the seasons, and just like we have 4 seasons, we have 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. And so as you get to know these within you, we can sometimes use our familiarity, right, with the feelings, the visceral feelings that we know and have become attuned with throughout our year. We can use those and experience that same energetic within ourselves throughout our month. We have an inner spring, we have an inner summer, we have an inner fall, we have an inner winter. And so I think that that's helpful as you're starting to get to know the rhythm of this infradian rhythm of your menstrual cycle. It can be really helpful because we don't want to just know it, right? We don't want to like write it down and memorize it. We want to like know it in our bodies. And so it can be helpful to kind of overlay that rhythm on top of a rhythm that you have, the dynamics of a rhythm that you have experienced multiple times throughout your life so far. So we're gonna use that as a tool. So I wanna talk a little bit about why should we cycle sync. So there's a couple reasons why I want to advocate for getting into this practice. Firstly, it creates a deep reverence and sacredness around our cycle. Like I said, we want to shift disempowering language and belief systems around our period and shift it into deep respect and sacredness for our bodies. When we listen to our body's intelligence, right? It's so intelligent. We start to stop battling it, stop trying to control it, and we start to align with it. Things start to flow. They start to become more harmonious and easeful. We want to respect our bodies rather than speak about them in ways that is disempowering. So reverence and sacredness really are a natural state that arise because you are literally shape-shifting your life, your lifestyle on top of these different phases of your cycle. And to take action in that way is deeply respectful, right? It's honorable of moving things around to fit that. There's a deep sense of reverence that's cultivated. Second, when we learn to honor our inner timing of our cycle, we really begin to flourish and thrive. And the more that we begin to like ride this rhythm that we find we have every single month, the more we begin to trust other inclinations and other rhythms that we start to see outside ourselves. We learn how to dialogue with our body, what's serving it, what's enhancing its well-being, and what's depleting its well-being, what feels like we're forcing it and what feels like we're flowing with it. Honoring our inner timing really helps us to not just like get by, but to thrive. Thirdly, our period protects our longevity and enhances our vitality, right? We have a period for a reason, and it's very essential. When I had a deep hormonal imbalance and lost my period, it was not too long after that I suffered from a stress fracture that was really hard to heal. And that is directly correlated, right? One of the things that happens when we lose our periods, that we have onset osteoporosis. So our having a period is really protective to your health. Some of the things that it protects us against is, again, osteoporosis, heart disease, breast disease, and dementia. So we're really learning to embrace and work with our cycle for ultimate vitality and longevity. Our cycles, our period, is actually a monthly hormonal report. So every month we get a little check-in on how our health is doing, right? The color, the consistency, and the duration of our period are all indications as to the state of our menstrual health. So every month we have an external report on how our internal health is going. And this becomes so fun when you start to learn what to look for, and you start to try to check in with that and then make adjustments based on that. I was always really into school. I really enjoyed school. I loved getting grades. I thought it was really fun. And I feel that way kind of now with my Circadian Rhythm and working with the cycle syncing practice, right? It's like a monthly report, and then you go back the next month and you implement, you experiment, you shift things around, you try new things to create more harmony and more synchronicity within yourself. And then the last thing, why cycle sync? For me personally, understanding my unique female biochemistry has done immense wonders for my mental health, right? My mental and emotional health. Before, when I was trying to achieve all these different things with my body, I was trying to be my healthiest. It just felt like I was hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and like my body was betraying me in essence. I experienced a lot of guilt and shame around not understanding why I felt different things, not understanding why I was hungry at certain times of the month, not understanding why it would feel like one day I had a really positive body image, and then almost overnight I was just overwhelmed and had the most negative thoughts about myself. And it would just be like a flip. But understanding my rhythm, I understand how I change every day of the month and the progression. I can learn how to anticipate what I might see, and the way that my thoughts kind of progress throughout the month, the way that my weight kind of progresses throughout the month, the way that my appetite progresses throughout the month. And then I'm not taking that on as my fault. It's not my fault. I didn't do something wrong. It's actually a process that is undergoing, and it is predictable, and I can anticipate it and I can work with it, and is ultimately for me, not working against me. So this is key, and this is like what the main reason that I have continued to implement these practices into my life and continue to study them. So I want to go into the 4 different phases of the cycle so you have an idea as to what this ebb and flow looks like and what to kind of expect. Alyssa Vitti, the founder of Flow Living, she has 2 incredible books full of educational content on women's health and cycle syncing. So I highly recommend her. But in her book, she uses the acronym POWR, POWR, to kind of break down the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So I'm going to go through and we can give you I'm going to give you the actual phase names and the season, the inner season that they represent. But I'm also going to give you her acronym to help to just like integrate the information. We really want to cultivate a sensibility around it. I will always advocate for this. We don't want to just know a bunch of facts and then try to get them there. We really want to like develop our own feeling, our own taste for the way that this information happens for us. So yeah, POWER stands for prepare, open up, work, and rest. So let's get started with phase number 1, which is our follicular phase. This is our inner spring. The follicular phase is about 7 to 10 days in length, and it is starts right after you stop your bleed, so right after your period ends. And it is kind of characterized by an upswing in energy. Your hormones are at their lowest after you finish bleeding. And so the concentrations of the hormones begin to kind of escalate throughout this phase. It's characterized by, again, this upswing of energy. You have a little bit more pep in your step, might not be feeling as fatigued, might feel like you want to move your body a little bit. And this is an excellent time for planning, strategizing, envisioning, dreaming. If we think about the spring season, right? Like we're kind of all just like emerging from winter, and we kind of like, we're planning our vacations. We're like, where am I gonna go this summer? You're starting to see some more people, be out and about in nature a little bit more because the temperature is warmer. Same thing with your own internal energy. And then biologically, what's happening during this period is that your hormones are stimulating a follicle, and the follicles are beginning to swell in preparation to release an egg. Phase number 2 is ovulation, or your ovulatory phase. And this is your inner summer. This is my favorite phase of the cycle, but it is characterized by some very good high energy feelings. So during this phase, right, an egg is released into the fallopian tube, and it begins to make its way down to the uterus. And this is the phase of the cycle where you are fertile, where you can become pregnant. So biologically, we want to procreate, right? Our bodies want us to procreate. So we have a little bit more attraction during this phase. Yeah, we have a little bit more magnetism. We have a little bit more charisma available to us that's just naturally there. So it's really fun to know this, because then you can capitalize on it. Yeah, so I love this. You feel a little bit more magnetic. You tend to feel really good in your body. You have a lot of energy, and it's a really great time to be social. If we think about summer, right? We're out, about, we're active, we're doing all the things, all the activities, we're seeing all the people, and we have the energy for it, right? The environment supports it. Same with our ovulatory phase. This phase is around 3 to 4 days long. It's not that long. So after our ovulatory phase, we move into our third phase, which is our luteal phase, or our inner ball. Ooh, I forgot to tell you the acronym. So the follicular phase stands for P, that first phase, right? And that's prepare, right? The planning, the strategizing, the envisioning, the dreaming. Prepare. Ovulatory phase stands for open up. Yeah, so we're really open. We're open-hearted, we're social, we have really high communication skills. And then our luteal phase, the third phase, is the W in power, and that stands for work. This is a longer phase of our cycle. It's anywhere from 10 to 14 days in length. And this is usually the phase, right? We peaked, it's summer, it's fall. So what starts to happen in the fall? We start to move indoors a little bit. We start to go back to school, right? So W, work. There's this sense of becoming a little bit more internal, and this is where our energy starts to also come down a little bit. And this tends to be where personally I experience a big shift in mental health. I experience a big shift in my bodily health, and there's a couple things that are going on, so we're going to dive into those. But work really suggests that it's good to start to bring projects to completion, right? To fruition. We're wrapping things up, they're culminating. And we really have the mental space and the energy to kind of make that happen during this phase. So in the luteal phase, right, the body is preparing to potentially be pregnant. So there's a couple things that happen. We have an increase in cortisol, our stress hormone, that happens naturally during this phase. So we have a little bit more cortisol like in our bloodstream. And this is, right, like if you were to be pregnant, you would want to be a little bit more vigilant, a little bit more cautious. So that's there for a good reason. And then we also have an increase in metabolism. So if you've ever hit like the week before your period and you are ravenous and you could eat everything in sight. This is why your metabolism is revved up when you hit your luteal phase. And again, if you think about this, if you were potentially pregnant, the body would want to recruit more nourishment and more resources for the baby. So all within good reason. And when we know this, again, we're not suddenly, when we're more tired, we're not judging ourselves. When we're more hungry, we're not trying to restrict. We're honoring those hunger cues. And if we know that we already have more cortisol in our bloodstream naturally, we're going to avoid activities that overstress us in this period, because that's going to lead to burnout of the adrenals. Yeah, so we want to really be cognizant of how much stress we're going through in this phase. Yeah. And then in terms of our inner fall, right? In terms of that completion or the work, the W, you can also think of this as harvesting, right? That's what we do in the fall. We harvest the crops, we bring it to completion. And so this is where you get to harvest all the planning and the opening up and the cultivating that you've done. This is where you get to harvest that work. And then our final phase of the menstrual cycle is the one that we all know is our period. It's our menstrual phase. And so this is the R in the acronym POWER, and it stands for rest. This phase is anywhere from 3 to 7 days long, and it is imperative that we change our energy levels, that we change our approach, and we honor this period. This is an excellent time for introspection, for a bit more solitude, for slower days, to take off our plate what we can, and really allow ourselves to reflect on the month that has just gone by, right? So physiologically, what's happening is we are shedding the uterine lining. We weren't pregnant, so we're shedding that lining. With it, we're shedding out those hormones. So the hormone levels start to come down to a very low level during this phase. And what happens during this phase is, because the hormone levels are at their lowest, the hemispheres of our brain are actually able to communicate with one another the most clearly they have our whole infradian rhythm. So when we say reflect, when we say take inventory, our intuition is heightened, right? We're able to have more clarity during this time. So it's really fantastic to seize this opportunity to take inventory, to reflect, to kind of be on one's own and use that time, right? Be as internal as you need. Take naps like you would do your workout. Rest and rejuvenate during this phase, because you'll find that if you take that time to rejuvenate and nourish yourself during this time, right, this sacred time during your bleed, then you will be fully prepared and renewed for the cycle to begin again. Let me see if I forgot anything in there, but that is really the entire cycle that we have. We've got follicular, we've got ovulatory, we've got luteal, and we have menstrual. And when we can learn to ride that cycle, ride that wave, I promise you're going to find a wealth of information, of ease, of thriving health, and most importantly, I hope that you find more balanced hormones, more reverence for both your female biochemistry, your period, and your hormones. And yes, so begin to practice cycle syncing. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I will chat your ear off about it. But I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, keep educating yourself on this. Keep looking for resources. I promise the information is out there to support your women's health journey and finding a place of deep balance and harmony within your hormonal orchestration.